Hello and welcome. If you're gearing up for your GP AKT exam, you already know the cervical screening pathway is a super high-yield topic. Now, I know it can feel a bit tricky with all its branches, but honestly, it's very, very logical once you break it down. So in this explainer, we're going to walk through it step by step to give you exactly what you need to know to ace those questions. Let's get right into it. Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we'll cover the massive paradigm shift to HPV-first testing. You've got to understand this. Then we'll trace the core pathway for both negative and, of course, positive results. After that, we'll dive into those crucial exceptions and follow-ups that examiners love to ask about. And to finish, we'll do a rapid-fire summary of the absolute must-know points for your exam. Sound good? So, first things first, let's talk about the fundamental change. Honestly, understanding why the pathway has been updated is the real key to remembering how the whole thing works. It all just clicks into place. Right, let's put you in the hot seat. Imagine a cervical screening result pops up on your screen. In the old days, you'd probably be scanning for words like dyskaryosis or borderline changes, right? Well, not anymore. Today, your first question, the absolute starting point for absolutely everything that follows, is completely different. And there it is. This slide shows that shift perfectly. We've moved from looking for abnormal cells first, the effect, to looking for the cause of those abnormal cells. And that cause is high-risk human papillomavirus, or HRHPV. So now cytology, looking at the cells under a microscope, that's become a secondary test. It only gets done if that initial HPV test comes back positive. Okay, so let's see how this new philosophy actually builds out into the clinical algorithm that you need to know. We're going to follow a sample right from the very beginning of its journey. And just to really hammer this point home, because it is so important for the AKT, every single sample gets an HPV test. That's it. This is the primary screen now. If, and only if, that test is positive, does the lab then go on to look at the actual cells. So this creates the first and honestly the most important fork in the road for our decision-making. The entire rest of the pathway hinges on the answer to this one simple question. Is high-risk HPV present or not? Let's take the easy route first, the one we love to see. If the HR-HPV test is negative, well, that's the end of the line. It's game over for this sample. The patient just goes straight back to their normal recall schedule. It makes sense, right? Without that persistent high-risk virus, the risk of developing any significant precancerous changes is just extremely low. This is by far the most common and straightforward outcome. Okay, now for the part that needs a little more brain power, and frankly, this is where a lot of the exam questions live. What happens when that HR-HPV result comes back positive? Well, there are two main scenarios that you need to get crystal clear in your head. Remember our number one rule: a positive HPV test is the trigger. So the lab now takes that exact same sample and performs cytology on it. They're looking for any changes in the cervical cells. And the result of that test gives us our next decision point. And here is the first classic scenario you're going to see all the time. The virus is present, but right now, the cells look perfectly normal. So we have the potential cause, but we don't have the effect. Yet. We obviously can't just ignore it, but we don't need to jump to an invasive procedure either. So what's the protocol? This timeline lays out the plan perfectly. It's all about active surveillance. We bring them back in 12 months and repeat the test. If they're now HPV negative, great. They can go back to normal recall. But if they are still HPV positive, we repeat it one final time at the 24-month mark. Now, if that high-risk HPV is still hanging around after 2 full years, that's when we refer them to colposcopy, even if the cells still look normal. The key trigger for referral here is persistent infection. Okay, so that was scenario number 1. But what about scenario 2? What if the HPV is positive, and this time the cytology comes back showing abnormal cells? This slide makes it beautifully simple. If HR-HPV is positive, it really doesn't matter what the abnormality is. It could be borderline changes, low-grade dyskaryosis, or scary-sounding high-grade changes. The virus, plus any kind of cellular abnormality, means the next step is always the same: referral to colposcopy. No waiting, no repeating tests, straight to colposcopy. Simple as that. All right, we have absolutely nailed the main pathway. Now let's talk about the special cases. These are just perfect for exam questions because they test whether you know the little details beyond that main algorithm. First up, the inadequate sample. This one's a really simple 2 strikes and you're out rule. If the lab says they can't read the first sample, you repeat it in 3 months. Fine. But if that second sample also comes back as inadequate, you do not try for a third time. The patient gets referred directly to colposcopy. So remember, 2 inadequate samples equals colposcopy. Next, the test of cure, or TOC. This is for our patients who have had treatment for CIN, like a LETS procedure. To check if that treatment was successful, they go on to a special follow-up pathway. The key time frame you need to burn into your brain for the AKT is that the test of cure sample is taken 6 months after their treatment. That's to confirm they've successfully cleared the HPV. Woo, we've covered a lot of ground. So before we finish, let's boil it all down into the ultimate cram sheet. This is your final rapid-fire review of the absolute must-know, can't-forget facts. Okay, you ready? Here we go. Number 1, HPV is always the first test. Number 2, if HPV is positive but the cytology is normal, you repeat it 12 months and if needed, again at 24 months. 3, if HPV is positive and there is any cytological abnormality, the answer is always colposcopy. 4, 2 inadequate samples in a row means referral to colposcopy. And finally, number 5, after treatment for CIN, the test of cure is done at 6 months. If you can lock those 5 facts in, you are going to be in fantastic shape. And to wrap up, here's a final thought to take with you into your next clinic. You see, knowing this logic inside and out doesn't just help you pass your exam. It actually transforms how you can explain this whole process to a patient. So how can you better manage their expectations about what the results might be and what the follow-up plans could look like even before you take the sample? Something to think about. That's all for now. Good luck with your revision.